Hey everyone, ready to tackle this mountain of stress and burnout info?
It feels like it's everywhere these days, right?
It really does. Who has time to sort through it all?
Well, that's what we're here for.
Exactly. So today we're diving into an interview with Dr. Aditi Nerurkar.
A Harvard physician and stress expert.
Right, from the Diary of a CEO YouTube channel.
We'll pull out the highlights and give you the most useful stuff on how to not just survive,
but thrive.
You know, one thing that struck me about Dr. Nerurkar
Yeah?
is how she connects her personal experiences to the science of stress.
I noticed that too.
She struggled to find help for her own stress.
Really?
And that actually drove her to become the expert she needed.
Wow. It's amazing how often our biggest challenges kind of become our callings, right?
Absolutely.
One thing that really jumped out at me were the stats she shared. Like 72% of people are struggling with stress.
It's a lot.
And 70% are showing signs of burnout. That's basically everyone.
It really is. Regardless of age, industry, or background, she called it the great equalizer.
It's true, it doesn't discriminate. But what's even more alarming is how the very definition of burnout is changing, right?
That classic picture we have.
Totally exhausted, unable to function.
Yeah, that's becoming less common.
Is it?
Dr. Nerurkar calls the new form atypical burnout. And it's so much sneakier.
Atypical burnout. So what does that actually look like then?
The core symptom is this inability to detach from work.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So you might be hooked on your job, constantly checking your phone, pushing yourself.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it's all an illusion of productivity. It masks the fact that you're burning out.
I think a lot of us have fallen into that trap, especially with hustle culture being so prevalent. How can we tell if we're just dedicated or if we're heading for this atypical burnout?
It takes some honest self-reflection. Are you making time for things outside of work?
Like sleep, relationships, hobbies.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I see. Or is work always on your mind, even when you're physically away from it?
Yeah.
That's a big red flag.
Okay, that makes sense. Dr. Nerurkar did mention the science behind all this stress.
Yeah.
Things like the HPA axis. Can you break that down for anyone who's not familiar?
Sure. The HPA axis, it stands for the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis.
Okay.
Basically, it's our body's stress response system.
Like mission control for how we react to pressure.
Exactly. Now, within this system,
Yeah.
there's a key player. It's called the amygdala.
Okay.
Dr. Nerurkar calls it the reptilian brain.
Reptilian brain. What's its role?
It's the ancient part of our brain
Okay.
that governs our fight or flight response. It's all about survival. Back in the day,
Yeah.
it helped our ancestors escape from, predators and stuff.
Right.
But here's the catch. Our modern stressors,
They're not exactly saber-toothed tigers, are they?
right? Deadlines, bills, social pressures.
Yeah.
These are chronic threats, not acute ones.
So our reptilian brain is in a constant state of on, even if the danger isn't immediate.
Exactly. And that keeps the stress hormone, cortisol, pumping through us, which over time
Yeah.
can really harm our physical and mental health.
We definitely need to find ways to calm that down. She also brought up something called stress contagion.
Right.
I thought stress wasn't literally contagious, though.
It's not like catching a cold, no.
No.
But our hearts generate these powerful electromagnetic fields that extend out about 15 feet. These fields create a vibe that others can sense. So while stress itself isn't a virus, so to speak.
Our emotional states can definitely rub off on the people around us. I mean, you can just feel the tension in a room sometimes.
Exactly. And this ties into why authenticity and presence are so important.
Especially in a setting like this podcast. We may not be physically together, but our energy and presence still come through, right?
Absolutely. We're creating a shared space with you, the listener.
Even across the airwaves. Love that. Now, Dr. Nerurkar used a powerful analogy that really stuck with me. The canary in the coal mine. Yes, coal miners used canaries to detect dangerous gases, right?
Exactly.
But how does that apply to stress?
Well, each of us has a unique canary.
What do you mean?
It's a physical sign that our stress levels are rising. It's our body trying to tell us to pay attention.
And just like those miners, ignoring those early warning signs can have serious consequences, right?
Absolutely.
What are some examples of these personal canaries?
For Dr. Nerurkar, it was heart palpitations.
Okay.
For me, I get these weird tongue spots, but it really varies.
It does, yeah.
Headaches, digestive issues, insomnia, even getting sick more often.
Oh, for me, it's definitely my skin. Breakouts galore whenever stress hits.
It's about tuning into those subtle signs, before things get really bad.
Yeah, I think we all have those signs, but we often just dismiss them.
Exactly. So pay attention to your canary can be a game changer.
So, listener, take a moment. What's your canary? What subtle signs pop up when your stress is creeping up?
Knowing this is your first line of defense.
Love that. Now, speaking of taking action, Dr. Nerurkar has this strategy she calls the rule of two.
Yes, this is a good one.
I like the sound of that. What's the idea behind it?
It comes from research showing that our brains can only effectively handle 2 new changes at a time.
Okay.
And get this applies even to positive changes.
Wait, so even good changes stress our brains?
They do. Think about it.
Huh?
Every new habit, even if it's ultimately beneficial, takes mental and emotional energy to adapt to.
That's why those New Year's resolutions always backfire.
Exactly. We try to do too much at once, and then we end up feeling defeated.
So the rule of two is about making small changes instead of those drastic overhauls.
Yes. So instead of saying, I'm going to exercise, meditate, eat perfectly, and sleep 8 hours starting now.
Right.
You pick 2 things to focus on. Maybe it's taking a 20-minute walk each day and incorporating a simple breathing exercise.
Okay. Yeah.
And then once those feel solid, you add 2 more.
Working with your brain, not against it.
Exactly.
So much more realistic and sustainable. I love how practical this approach is. Now, in her book, Dr. Nerurkar outlines 5 key areas for resetting your brain. We won't cover them all today,
Right.
but let's touch on a few that you can start using right away. What's at the top of the list?
First, never underestimate the power of movement. Even short bursts of activity like a 20-minute walk can significantly reduce stress.
She mentioned how sitting for long periods actually increases anxiety. Like, we're designed to move.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be intense exercise.
Yeah.
Walking, stretching, even dancing around your living room.
Movement as medicine. I love it. What else?
Next, the power of breathing. Dr. Nerurkar is a huge advocate for diaphragmatic breathing.
Belly breathing.
Exactly.
For anyone wanting to try it, how do you do it correctly?
It's simple, but sometimes we overthink it. Just place one hand on your chest and the other on your belly. As you inhale deeply through your nose, imagine your belly expanding like a balloon. Not your chest rising, but your belly.
Got it.
And as you exhale slowly through your mouth, let your belly fall naturally.
It's amazing how such a simple technique can shift us from that fight or flight to rest and digest.
Our bodies are incredible.
They really are. Dr. Nerurkar also recommends a technique called Stop, Breathe, Be. What is that?
It's essentially a mini meditation to help you become more present.
Like a little mental reset button. I love it. What's the third strategy?
This one might surprise you. Therapeutic writing.
Really?
Dr. Nerurkar suggests writing for 20 minutes a day.
Okay.
For 4 days straight.
About what?
About a stressful event that's been on your mind.
Hold on, just getting it all out on paper can actually reduce stress.
It can. Research shows that this type of writing helps us reframe thoughts, process emotions, and increase our sense of self-efficacy.
So it's like giving your brain a chance to make sense of things.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see that. Speaking of making sense of things, let's talk about something we're all dealing with in this digital age. Popcorn brain. Oh, yeah. That constant stimulation from our devices. My attention span feels, well, a bit scattered.
You're not alone. Popcorn brain is a real phenomenon.
Is it really?
It's caused by that constant digital engagement.
Okay, yeah.
Our brains are basically being trained to jump from one thing to the next.
Makes sense. And we might not even realize how deeply it's affecting us. What did Dr. Nerurkar suggest for taming this popcorn brain?
She's a big proponent of creating a media diet, just like we create a healthy eating plan.
That's interesting. So not about cutting things out entirely, but making more mindful choices.
Exactly.
Okay, where do we even begin with this media diet?
She recommends 3 main strategies: time limits, geographical limits, and logistical limits. It's all about setting healthy boundaries with technology.
I'm ready to take back control. Tell me more about each one.
Okay, first, time limits. Dr. Nerurkar suggests limiting your consumption of bad news to 20 minutes a day.
Wow, just 20 minutes.
It's so easy to get sucked into the negativity,
I know, it's true.
So a timer can be really helpful.
Think we need those guardrails, right?
Right. Now, geographical limits are about creating tech-free zones.
Okay.
Keep your phone 10 feet away from your workstation, off your nightstand at night.
Ah, the nightstand rule. I've tried that, and it really does make a difference for sleep. What about logistical limits?
It's about setting ground rules for how and when you engage with your phone.
Okay.
So maybe you designate specific times to check email or social media, or you have a rule that you don't use your phone during meals.
Okay, yeah. So it's about being intentional, not reactive.
Exactly.
I love that. And speaking of things that can really drain our energy,
Yeah.
Dr. Nerurkar talked about a topic that's becoming more and more common: loneliness.
It's a fascinating paradox. We're more connected than ever through technology, but loneliness is at epidemic levels.
It is. She shared the statistic: 330 million people globally go 2 weeks without speaking to anyone.
2 weeks.
Wow. That's really sad. It really highlights how online connection isn't a substitute for that real human interaction.
It's not. And the consequences of chronic loneliness are far more severe than we might think.
In what way?
Well, studies show it's as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day
Oh, wow.
and increases the risk of heart disease and stroke by 30%.
Really?
And it can even shorten our lifespan.
So those real-world connections, even brief ones, they're not just about feeling good, they're essential for our health.
They are. We're wired for connection.
Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about something that I find fascinating: the gut-brain connection.
Ah, yes.
It's a bit mind-boggling to me, to be honest. Can you break it down for us?
Sure. The science of the microbiome, all those trillions of bacteria in our gut, is relatively new.
Right.
But what we're discovering is that these tiny organisms play a huge role in our overall health, both physical and mental.
So it's not just about digestion.
No.
Okay.
In fact, our gut contains 3 to 5 times more serotonin receptors than our brain.
Hold on. Serotonin, that's the happy hormone, right? I always thought that was all about the brain.
It's a game changer, isn't it?
Yeah.
It highlights just how powerful that gut-brain connection is. When our gut is healthy, our mood, sleep, you name it, it's all positively impacted.
So how do we reset this gut-brain connection?
It's a holistic approach.
Mhm.
Diet, exercise, stress management, even sleep.
It all ties together.
It really does. Dr. Nerurkar also recommends incorporating probiotic-rich foods into your diet.
To nourish those beneficial bacteria, right?
Exactly.
This is all so interconnected. Now, I want to talk about a concept she introduced that really stuck with me: living a lifetime in a day.
Ah, yes. A beautiful concept. It's a powerful antidote to that hustle culture, which just leaves us burnt out.
I know, I fall into that trap all the time. So tell me, what's this idea of living a lifetime in a day all about?
Dr. Nerurkar says that a fulfilling life has 6 key elements:
Okay.
childhood wonder, meaningful work, solitude, vacation or joyful activities, family and community connection, and reflection. And instead of waiting to achieve these someday in the future, she suggests incorporating a little bit of all 6 into each day.
So instead of focusing on being constantly productive, it's about bringing more meaning and balance into each day.
Right here, right now.
I love that. Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier: the potential for vicarious trauma from consuming too much negative news.
Yeah.
With everything going on in the world, it's so easy to feel overwhelmed, maybe even traumatized by that constant stream of negativity.
It's true. It's like, even if those events aren't happening directly to us, our brains still process them.
Right, right.
And research has shown that consuming graphic content can increase our risk of developing PTSD.
Wait, so even if it's not happening to us, our brains can still be traumatized by it?
It really highlights the need to be mindful of what we consume and to protect ourselves. Dr. Nerurkar suggests focusing on reading articles from trusted sources rather than watching those graphic videos.
Makes sense.
Limiting our exposure, creating those tech-free zones to disconnect.
All great strategies. It's about taking back control of our media consumption, choosing quality over quantity.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. Now, one final thing before we move on. Dr. Nerurkar debunked this whole myth that we can effectively multitask. She said that what we call multitasking is actually just task switching.
Right. Rapidly jumping between different tasks.
Yeah. And while it might feel like we're getting more done, she said it actually decreases our productivity and increases stress.
Duh.
So instead of being super efficient, we're actually doing more harm than good. Why is that?
Well, every time we switch tasks, our brain has to reorient itself.
I see.
And that takes time and energy. It's like constantly interrupting your flow state.
That's why I always feel so scattered and drained after a day of multitasking. What did Dr. Nerurkar suggest we do instead?
She recommends a technique called time blocking.
Oh, I've heard of that. Okay.
So you break down your day into chunks of time dedicated to specific tasks.
It's like scheduling appointments with yourself, right?
Exactly. So instead of constantly reacting to distractions, you create a structure that allows you to really focus.
And be more present, right?
Yes. And when we monotask, we not only boost our productivity and reduce stress, but we also tap into a deeper sense of flow.
It's like giving our brains permission to relax and fully engage with the task at hand.
And that feeling of accomplishment actually further reduces stress. It's a win-win.
I love that. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to take a little pause and let all this information sink in.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
We've explored the changing landscape of stress, debunked some common myths, and looked at some surprisingly simple but powerful strategies for taking back control of our well-being.
Absolutely.
But this is just the beginning.
Stay tuned for part 2.
Yes. We'll be back with even more insights from Dr. Nerurkar. We'll explore the power of our nervous system, the importance of self-compassion, and how to create a more balanced and fulfilling life. So until next time, take care, everyone.
See you soon. Welcome back. As we dig deeper into all this, it's important to remember that even when things feel super overwhelming, there's always something we can do to kind of shift the balance.
That's a good point. So often when we're stressed, we feel powerless, like we're victims of our circumstances. But you're saying we always have a choice, even if it's a small one.
Exactly. It's about recognizing those choices, even in the middle of all the chaos. Maybe it's taking a few deep breaths.
Yeah.
Or removing yourself from a stressful situation. Or even just acknowledging how you feel without judgment.
It always comes back to what Dr. Nerurkar said about the power of the breath, right? It's like our built-in reset button.
It really is. And the more we practice using it consciously, the better we get at regulating our nervous system.
Okay.
And just navigating those tough moments.
We're training our brains to handle stress better. Okay. So we talked about breathing exercises, time blocking, therapeutic writing. What other tools did Dr. Nerurkar give us that we can use right away?
She's a big advocate for what she calls movement as medicine. Even short bursts of activity can have a huge impact on our stress levels.
Oh, that's interesting. Because when we're stressed, we just want to curl up on the couch, right?
I know. It's counterintuitive.
I know.
But getting our bodies moving can be a total game changer.
For our energy and mood, yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be intense exercise either.
Right.
Walking in nature, dancing, gentle stretching.
Anything that gets us out of that slump,
Yes. The key is to find something you actually enjoy and make it a regular habit.
Movement as medicine. I love it. It sounds like this is all about taking a holistic view of our well-being.
It is. Another piece of that is creating a media diet, just like we'd create a healthy eating plan.
Right.
We're bombarded with information these days.
All the time, yeah.
And it can really take a toll if we're not careful.
It's true. It's so easy to get sucked into the endless scroll of social media or the 24/7 news cycle. So where do we even begin to create this media diet?
The same principles apply as with the rule of 2. Time limits, geographical limits, and logistical limits.
Okay. So boundaries are key.
Boundaries are everything. It's about consciously choosing how we engage with information.
Okay. So what would those limits look like? Can you give us some examples?
Sure. So for time limits, maybe set a specific amount of time each day for news or social media. It's easy to get lost down those rabbit holes, so having a timer can be really helpful.
Makes sense. What about those geographical limits?
That's about creating tech-free zones. So, no phones at the dinner table, a charging station outside the bedroom.
Right.
Reclaiming those spaces for connection and just being present.
I love that. Creating those sacred spaces, it's a reminder that we don't have to be on all the time.
Exactly. Now, for those logistical limits, think about setting some rules for how you engage. Maybe disable notifications, turn off work email after a certain time, or only check social media at specific times.
It's about being proactive, not letting those pings and alerts control us, right?
Exactly. Aligning technology with your needs. Now, speaking of needs, Dr. Nerurkar really emphasized something that often gets overlooked when we're stressed. Self-compassion.
Oh, yeah.
It's so crucial. We're often our own worst critics, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed.
It's true. It's easy to fall into those negative thought patterns, beating ourselves up for not being perfect.
And that just adds to the stress. Dr. Nerurkar encourages us to practice self-compassion, treating ourselves with the same kindness we'd offer a friend.
I love that, like turning that inner critic into a supportive coach.
Exactly. Notice those negative thoughts and gently challenge them.
Yeah,
Remind yourself that you're human, doing your best, and that's enough.
we all deserve kindness, especially from ourselves.
Absolutely. And building that inner strength and resilience, it's not about pushing through challenges at all costs. It's about knowing when to rest, recharge, and ask for help.
Being strong and being kind to ourselves.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, can we get back to the concept of living a lifetime in a day? I'm curious how we can actually put this into practice, in our busy lives.
It's all about those small, intentional choices. So, for childhood wonder, maybe take a few moments to appreciate the beauty around you.
Yeah.
Listen to a song that lifts your spirits, or do something that sparks your curiosity, even if it seems silly.
It's about giving ourselves permission to play, right?
Exactly. Now, for meaningful work, it's not necessarily about having the perfect job. It's about finding purpose in what you do.
So whether it's our paid work, volunteering, even those everyday tasks at home,
Yes. It's about feeling a sense of contribution.
like our efforts matter.
Exactly. And for solitude, even just a few minutes a day can make a huge difference.
It can be tough to prioritize that quiet time, though, in our always connected world.
It can. But those few minutes of quiet contemplation can really do wonders. Now, what about vacation?
Yeah.
How do we bring that into our daily lives?
I know, it sounds almost indulgent, right? Like, shouldn't we be working?
No, it's not about literally going on vacation every day. It's about intentionally creating pockets of joy and relaxation.
Okay, I see.
Maybe it's listening to your favorite music, taking a hot bath, spending time in nature. It's about giving yourself permission to recharge.
Those mini vacations are so important for preventing burnout. Now, what about connecting with family and community?
That's about nurturing those relationships that really matter, spending quality time with loved ones, having meaningful conversations, even just offering a kind word to a stranger.
Yeah.
It all contributes to that sense of belonging.
It's a reminder that we're not meant to go through life alone.
Right. And finally, there's reflection. Think of this as your end-of-day ritual. Just take a few moments to pause, breathe, and reflect.
Maybe journal or meditate.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about cultivating gratitude.
And perspective, yeah.
So by consciously incorporating these 6 elements, we create a more balanced and fulfilling life.
It's about those small choices making a big difference, right?
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more area. The role of our nervous system. We've talked about the fight or flight response, but Dr. Nerurkar also discussed our parasympathetic nervous system, which is all about rest and relaxation.
So if our sympathetic nervous system is like the gas pedal, is the parasympathetic system the brakes?
That's a great analogy. It slows down our heart rate, lowers blood pressure, and promotes relaxation and recovery.
Sounds like something we could all use more of. How do we tap into this rest and digest mode?
A lot of the things we've talked about actually activate the parasympathetic nervous system,
Really? Okay.
like deep breathing, mindfulness, spending time in nature, even gentle movement.
It's amazing how these simple things can have such a big impact. It's like we have this built-in self-healing capacity, right?
We do. And the more we use these practices, the better our nervous system gets at handling stress.
So it's not about eliminating stress, but becoming more resilient to it.
Exactly. Dr. Nerurkar mentioned this concept called vagal tone, which refers to the strength and activity of our vagus nerve.
Okay.
And this nerve plays a huge role in regulating our parasympathetic nervous system.
The vagus nerve, why is it so important?
It's this long nerve that connects our brain to many major organs,
Like what?
like our heart, lungs, digestive system.
So it's like a communication highway between the brain and body.
Exactly. And a strong vagal tone means our parasympathetic system is working optimally. We can relax easier, recover from stress better, and regulate our emotions.
So that's what we're aiming for, high vagal tone. Can we actually do anything to strengthen it?
Yes, a lot of those things we've been talking about can actually help.
Like what?
Deep breathing, mindfulness, movement, spending time in nature, even singing, laughing, and gargling.
Wait, singing and laughing can boost our vagal tone. That's amazing.
It's like a prescription for joy.
It sounds too good to be true.
I know, right? But there's a lot of research to support it.
So taking care of ourselves is about more than just, the serious stuff. It's also about bringing more joy into our lives.
Exactly.
Okay, I love that. Now, what else did she say about the vagus nerve?
She explained that it's a two-way street.
What do you mean?
It's not just signals going from the brain to the body, but also from the body back to the brain.
So what we do with our bodies can actually influence how our brain functions.
Exactly. It really shows how connected the mind and body are.
It's like when we do things that calm our nervous system, those signals travel up to the brain and promote relaxation, right?
Yes, it's like a feedback loop.
So cool. But what happens if that communication gets disrupted? Dr. Nerurkar mentioned something called vagal nerve dysfunction.
Right. That's when the communication between the brain and body through the vagus nerve gets messed up.
What does that look like?
It can show up in a lot of ways. Digestive issues, difficulty swallowing,
Oh, wow.
anxiety, fatigue, even fainting.
That's a lot.
It really shows how important the vagus nerve is. And the good news is, those same practices we've talked about, deep breathing, mindfulness, gentle exercise, those can help improve vagal nerve function.
So taking care of our nervous system, it's not just about managing stress.
It's about our overall health.
Exactly. Okay, now before we move on to the last part, can we get back to the idea of vicarious trauma from consuming too much negative news? With everything going on in the world, it's easy to feel overwhelmed.
It's a valid concern. Our brains process those events, even if they're not happening to us directly.
Right.
And remember what we said about graphic content and PTSD?
Right.
It's really important to set boundaries. Dr. Nerurkar suggested reading articles from trusted sources, limiting our exposure, and creating those tech-free zones to disconnect.
Finding that balance between staying informed and protecting our mental health.
Exactly. And remember, taking action can be really empowering.
Yeah.
Instead of just passively consuming negativity, maybe channel that energy into supporting causes you care about, having those tough conversations.
Yeah. Making a difference.
Exactly. Now, Dr. Nerurkar also talked about the 5 resets. It's a framework for taking control of our well-being.
The 5 resets. What are those?
It's about resetting our brains and building resilience. They focus on 5 different areas: mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and environmental.
Can you give us a quick overview of each one?
Sure. So the mental reset is about cultivating a growth mindset, challenging negative thoughts, and nurturing a positive inner dialogue.
Okay.
The physical reset focuses on movement, nutrition, and sleep. Those foundational pillars of health. The emotional reset is about learning to regulate our emotions, building healthy coping mechanisms, and having healthy relationships.
Makes sense. What about spiritual and environmental?
The spiritual reset is about connecting to something greater than ourselves, whether it's nature, faith, or a sense of purpose. And the environmental reset is about creating a supportive and nurturing environment.
So both physically and mentally.
Yes, maybe decluttering your home, surrounding yourself with positive people, spending time in nature.
It's all connected.
It really is. By incorporating these resets, we can create a more balanced and fulfilling life.
I love that. Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to connection and community. We talked about the loneliness epidemic and how serious that is.
We're social creatures, and we need those connections to thrive.
Technology can help us stay connected, but
it's not a replacement for those face-to-face interactions.
So how do we foster those deeper connections in a world that can feel isolating?
It takes effort, you know?
Yeah.
Prioritize quality time with loved ones, make an effort to have meaningful conversations, be present.
So put down the phone, look up, engage with the world.
Exactly.
It's about those moments of genuine connection.
Yes. Feeling seen, heard, and understood.
Creating those safe spaces where we can be ourselves.
That sense of community, of belonging is so important.
It's like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Beautifully said. Now, before we wrap up this part, I want to talk about something Dr. Nerurkar called toxic resilience.
Toxic resilience. Wait, isn't resilience a good thing?
It is. But she was talking about this pressure to constantly power through, never show weakness, always be on.
Like never admitting we're struggling.
Exactly. That relentless pursuit of strengths can be really harmful.
So how do we know if our resilience is healthy or toxic?
Healthy resilience is about honoring our boundaries, practicing self-care, and recognizing when we need help.
It's about being human.
Exactly. Toxic resilience is about denying our needs, suppressing our emotions, pushing ourselves beyond our limits.
So trying to be superhuman.
And that leads to burnout. It's so important to remember that it's okay to not be okay. True strength comes from recognizing our limits.
And asking for help.
Yes, we need to create a culture where it's okay to be vulnerable.
A culture of compassion.
Exactly. And that's where we can all thrive.
I love that. Well, I think that's a good place to stop for now. We've covered a lot of ground. from self-compassion connection to the nervous system and toxic resilience.
We have.
But there's still more to come. In our final part, we'll look at the power of mindset, explore living a lifetime in a day even deeper, and leave you with some final thoughts for your journey to well-being.
Stay tuned. Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into stress and resilience.
It's amazing how much we've already covered, right? The science, those strategies for well-being.
Yeah. And in this last part, I think we should talk about one of the most powerful tools we have.
Okay.
Our mindset.
Mindset. Because honestly, sometimes it feels like stress is just inevitable, you know?
It is, to a degree. But Dr. Nerurkar really challenged me to rethink how I see stress.
How so?
Instead of the enemy, she says view it as a natural part of life
Mm-hmm.
and even a potential source of growth.
Hold on. Are you saying stress can be good for us?
In the right doses, yeah, absolutely. Think about it. We need some stress to motivate us,
Okay, yeah.
to push us, to help us adapt.
Like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But how do we know when it's working for us, not against us?
That's the key. Healthy stress is short-term, manageable.
Okay.
That feeling before a presentation or learning a new skill,
Yeah.
it gets us to take action.
But it's that chronic stress, the never-ending kind, that really gets us.
Exactly. That's what wears us down, leads to burnout, even health problems. The goal isn't to eliminate stress.
Right.
It's to manage it.
So how do we actually shift our mindset to see stress as a potential for growth, not a threat?
Dr. Nerurkar had a few really helpful strategies.
Okay.
First, recognize that stress is normal. Everyone feels it.
It's human.
Exactly. It's not a weakness.
It's about normalizing it. Yeah.
Right. Second, reframe those thoughts.
Instead of, I can't handle this.
Yeah. More like, this is a chance to learn.
Turn it around.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, focus on what you can control, not what you can't.
I like that.
You can always choose how you respond.
Okay. Taking back that control, even when things are tough.
And as you practice that, you'll become more resilient, I
Yeah.
promise.
Now, something else that Dr. Nerurkar talked about that really resonated with me, how people's internal experiences don't always match what they show on the outside.
Oh, I loved that part. She thought if someone looked confident, they felt confident.
Their inside match their outside.
Exactly. But she realized that's not true at all. People put on a brave face.
And we never know what someone's going through, right?
Right. It's a reminder to be kind, to have compassion.
And that goes for ourselves too, right? We can be so hard on ourselves.
It's easy to judge, yeah.
But remembering everyone has their struggles, that helps with self-compassion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Give yourself the kindness you'd give a friend.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to touch on living a lifetime in a day again. I love bringing those 6 elements of a fulfilling life into each day.
It's a great way to experience that joy, connection, purpose right now, not someday.
But practically, how do we do it when life's so busy?
Small choices.
Ugh.
For childhood wonder, take a few minutes to just appreciate what's around you.
Okay.
The beauty of nature, a good song.
Yeah.
Reconnect with that sense of awe,
It's not just for kids, that playfulness.
right? For meaningful work, it's about finding purpose.
Not necessarily the perfect job, but purpose.
Yeah. Whether it's volunteering or even those everyday tasks that matter.
It's about feeling like we contribute, that our actions make a difference.
Exactly. And solitude. That quiet time is so crucial nowadays.
I know, it's hard to make time for it.
But even a few minutes can make a world of difference.
Mm-hmm.
Find a quiet spot, close your eyes, breathe.
Like a mini retreat for the mind.
Exactly. Now, for vacation, it's not about literally going on vacation.
I was wondering about that.
It's about creating those moments of joy.
Okay. Yeah.
Listening to music, a hot bath, whatever, helps you unwind.
Give ourselves permission to enjoy those simple things.
Exactly. And connection, we've talked about it, but it's so important. We're social beings.
It takes effort to connect when everything pushes us towards isolation.
It does. Make that effort for quality time, meaningful conversations, be present.
Yeah. Put down the phone, engage.
Yes. Even a smile to a stranger can make a difference.
It's about remembering we're not alone.
And finally, reflection. At the end of the day, pause, breathe, appreciate.
Journaling, meditation.
Whatever helps you find gratitude, see the bigger picture.
Okay, so we've got childhood wonder, meaningful work, solitude, vacation, connection, and reflection.
If you weave those in each day, you'll have a more balanced, fulfilling life. You don't have to wait for some day to feel that.
That's powerful. I'm feeling really inspired after this deep dive.
Me too.
Yeah.
Dr. Nerurkar gave so much great advice in just one interview. We covered stress, managing it, The power of mindset, self-compassion, connection.
Movement, rest, boundaries with technology. It's been a lot.
And the gut-brain connection. The nervous system.
Right. But the main thing I'm taking away is that we have more control over our well-being than we think.
We do. If we make those small choices each day, we can create a life that's not just resilient, but truly joyful.
So as you go about your day, remember, breathe deep, move your body, connect with others, savor those moments of joy.
And be kind to yourself.
And to everyone around you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope you learned something valuable today.
Until next time, take care, everyone.
See you soon.